You trusted us with the massive, epic conclusion to the Stranger Things saga, the final volume of Season 5, and we are here. We're here to pull apart that grand finale, to separate the emotional stuff from the crucial lore that basically reshaped everything we thought we knew.
That's exactly right. Our goal here is to dive deep into the definitive answers, the stuff from the show itself, the established canon, and really focus on that cosmic hierarchy of evil, the true purpose of the mirror dimension, and what the show is finally saying about hope and sacrifice.
Okay, so I think we have to jump immediately to the biggest one, the fundamental shift in how we see this entire universe. Since Season 1, the Upside Down has been this lingering shadow, and the biggest question was always, did 11 just open a gate, or
did she create it? And the answer is, she created it. That is the crucial definitive answer. The Upside Down, as we know it, isn't some ancient dimension that was just sitting there. It's a dimension frozen in time, specifically, that moment in 1983. And it exists because her immense power collided with Grenner's experiments.
But if she created it, what was she connecting to? It can't have come from, nothing.
Exactly. And this is where the true geography of terror comes into play. The Upside Down is best understood not as a destination, but as a bridge.
A bridge.
A temporary distorted link connecting our reality, the right side up, to something else. Something called Dimension X.
Yeah.
That is the ancient, terrifying source of all the cosmic evil.
Wait, Dimension X? That sounds like something I'd draw on a napkin when I was 10.
Well, you're not that far off. It's actually a bit of a humorous nod. The creators confirmed it's a direct reference to the world in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But in the show's context, it's deadly serious. This is the source of the Mind Flayer, the true Lovecraftian horror that predates everything.
So the Upside Down is the corrupted hallway, but Dimension X is the horrifying basement. Which begs the question, what did Dr. Brenner Papa know about all this? Why was he so obsessed with weaponizing it?
Brenner's motivation was deeply personal. We learn more about this in the extended lore. His whole fascination started with his own father, who had an encounter with that realm and came back. Changed. Profoundly. And that history is what drove Brenner to study the Mind Flayer particles, the very essence of Dimension X, to try and harness it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just mad science. It was an attempt to control this ancient threat and, turn it against America's enemies.
That sounds like fighting a house fire with a nuclear bomb. But let's look at the other key piece of this. Henry Creel, patient 001 who becomes Vecna. His trip to Dimension X was the pivot for everything that followed.
It was, but a crucial piece of that puzzle, one that was clarified outside the main series, was the scientist's briefcase. Remember when Henry found that scientist in Nevada fleeing the lab, that briefcase?
Yeah.
It wasn't full of cash. It had the other half of the core memory.
The core memory.
Right.
For anyone just joining us, that sounds important, but what was that exactly?
Think of it like the foundational psychic blueprint. It held the complete data on the psychic abilities Brenner had isolated from Henry, the very abilities he was trying to replicate in the other kids.
Yeah.
So when Henry opens that briefcase and gets infected by the Mind Flayer particles through his bullet wound, he didn't just get power. He absorbed the intellectual property, basically, the full understanding of his own potential. And that allowed him to unleash everything.
So if Henry had the blueprint and he was the original source of the power, how does that change how the others were made? Did Brenner just, clone it from him?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Brenner used Henry's blood.
Yeah.
His genetic material. That's how he created the other psychic children. It confirms Henry's status, not just as the first experiment, but as the literal genetic originator of that power. It explains why he felt he was superior, because, in a way, they all came from him.
Which makes the character Tagliate even more layered. She wasn't just a stray psychic. She represents something specific.
Oh, absolutely. What's so insightful about Kali is her name. She's named after the Hindu goddess of time, change, destruction. But the name also means the abyss, which is the in-show term for Dimension X. She was designed as this pessimistic, nihilistic counterpoint to Mike Wheeler.
How so?
Kali believed, 100%, that Eleven's powers were destined for destruction, that they'd only lead to pain. She pushed El toward anger, revenge. And that perspective is in direct contrast to Mike's famous stance. His unwavering, simple belief that Eleven's powers are fueled not by science or rage,
but by love and connection.
Exactly. And the entire final conflict of the series basically asks you, which philosophical blueprint defines this power, the abyss or the connection?
I love that framing because that thematic duality was literally woven into the physical structure of the finale. The action was constantly mirrored.
Absolutely. The show is built around perfect mirror worlds. both in geography and in structure. The characters split into 4 distinct teams. L's psychic group doing the mind walk, Mike's group physically protecting them, and then the 2 military groups, Acre soldiers tracking L, and Kane's team at the physical gate. This let the kids face their literal mirror versions and locations in the Upside Down at the same time. It hammered home that every action on the right side up had a dire consequence in the dark mirror world.
And the concepts that powered all this final showdown, weren't just science fiction. They were direct literary echoes, which, if you connect the dots, it gives the show this surprising depth.
The showrunners leaned so heavily on classic fiction to anchor the cosmic horror. The clearest reference was Madeleine L'Engle's novel, A Wrinkle in Time. The evil entity in that book, it is this superb, terrifying brain that demands total intellectual conformity, a perfect parallel for the Mind Flayer.
And there's a specific mechanism in that book that 11 uses to defeat Vecna, isn't there?
Precisely. In the novel, the main character breaks the control of it through pure, unadulterated love, emotional connection. The show follows that blueprint to the letter. Vecna operates by exploiting guilt, shame, isolation. 11 defeats him and heals her friends by accessing and projecting moments of pure, unified connection. It's the ultimate statement that love breaks the control of the superb, cynical brain.
We also saw the geometric idea of the Upside Down discussed earlier in the season, that concept of the tesseract.
Yes, that concept was crucial. The Upside Down is constantly called a wrinkle in time, which directly reflects the physics of a tesseract, a 4-dimensional cube representing a folded, manipulated dimension. It's not just a parallel Earth, it's a space that's been warped and folded by pure psychic energy.
And the layers of reality in that final mind walk also felt very familiar.
They did. Clear nods to films like Inception, for sure. Especially in the deepest layers of Henry's psyche, the characters had to rely on synchronized signals, specifically knocks, between the layers to stay aware, to stay in control. It showed how fragile those boundaries really were.
So, amidst all of this cosmic physics and mind-bending horror, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The emotional core. It was still all about the original relationships. How did they resolve those personal stakes?
The emotional resolutions were the linchpin. You had that vital heart-to-heart between Mike and Will, which addressed years of tension. Mike just dismisses all of Will's anxieties about their bond changing, and he tells him explicitly, "We will be best friends, man." It just cements their future without forcing it in one direction. It honors their history.
And then there was, that devastating final confrontation for Hopper.
Oh, yeah. Hopper's storyline reached this powerful point of acceptance. Vecna used the ultimate weapon against him, a hallucination of his deceased daughter, Sarah. He had to face that grief one last time. And his conversation with 11 afterwards was just heartbreaking. He urges her to fight and finally accepts the reality that she isn't Sarah. And unlike Sarah, 11 has the choice to fight and to live. It was his way of letting go.
And finally, the infamous love triangle, Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan. That needed a definitive, mature resolution.
It did. And the resolution focused on platonic love triumphing over romantic rivalry. In the middle of all that chaos, Steve is saved by Jonathan. A full circle moment. And both boys ultimately decide that their friendship is more important than the competition for Nancy. The dynamic resolves not with a choice of partners, but with a choice of brotherhood.
All of this brings us back to the true nature of the enemy. For so long, we thought Henry Vecna was the ultimate bad guy, but it's clear now there was a whole cosmic hierarchy.
This raises the big question: who was really in charge? The major confirmation is that the Mind Flayer is the dominant, controlling entity. The relationship with Vecna is symbiotic. Sure, Vecna is the general, the doorway, the tactical mind, but the Mind Flayer is the dark Lovecraftian consciousness, the puppet master. It's constantly slipping into Henry's mind, overriding his free will to open doorways and command the legions.
That makes Henry less of a dark lord and more of a tragic, powerful proxy.
Exactly. He's a deeply tragic Luciferian figure. The religious symbolism is just striking. Think about his profile. He's presented as an Antichrist-type figure. He has 12 psychic disciples, a Judas figure in Holly. He experiences a form of resurrection. And he enters Dimension X, a desert-like hellscape, to confront the embodiment of evil, the Mind Flayer.
And the Luciferian parallels are particularly strong.
Right. Henry is cast out of our reality, sent to the underworld of Dimension X, just like Lucifer was cast from heaven. He transforms from this angelic-looking, vulnerable boy into a physically twisted demon. He is the father of lies, operating through powerful, deceptive hallucinations that exploit guilt and shame. And 11, in sharp contrast, is positioned as the chosen one, who uses the power of emotional truth to break his hold.
So the climax had to be both a psychological and physical expulsion of that puppet master's influence?
It was a massive dual confrontation across dimensions. And critically, that castle Vecna built in the Upside Down, that was revealed to be the Mind Flayer's body. The children unite all their forces, psychic and physical, to save Henry's last victims and eventually expel the Mind Flayer's corrupting black particles from Henry's system.
And the final decisive blow against Henry, the physical act, went to Joyce.
A hugely significant thematic choice. Joyce delivers that slow, final beheading of Vecna. It visually reinforces the show's entire message. Henry was an isolated, vulnerable boy who found comfort in destruction. But the gang, led by their mothers and their connections, chose to stand together. It was the unified strength of those family and friendship bonds that severed the isolated general from his cosmic master.
So the epilogue jumps 18 months later, trying to wrap things up, giving us closure, but also maintaining this crucial layer of ambiguity.
It does. Hawkins is rebuilding, the curse is lifted, and we see these moments of normalcy. Steve teaching at the community college, Jonathan off to film school. The dominant themes here are grief and the necessity of acceptance.
Hopper's advice to Mike, centered on moving forward, was one of the most poignant moments of that whole epilogue.
Absolutely. Hopper, who spent years just consumed by grief, tells Mike he has to accept the present and live his life. He argues Mike needs to attend graduation so that 11's sacrifice, whether it was perceived or real, can mean something. You can't stay stuck in the past. You have to let that sacrifice fuel the future.
And the emotional anchors of the group provided the real closure.
They did. Dustin, of course, gives the most memorable graduation speech, ripping off his gown to reveal the Hellfire Club shirt. And he talks about how true friendships are forged through the most chaotic, bizarre circumstances. It was a perfect emotional capstone for the group.
But the creators have said that the true intentional bookend, the thing they knew would end the series from the very beginning, was that final Dungeons & Dragons game.
That game was critical. It was their favorite opening scene, and it needed to be the ending. It's the final affirmation that Mike, the Dungeon Master, can write a happy ending for his players. And that scene also confirmed a theory that had been hinted at for years. Will meets a guy. It cements this hopeful, realized future for him outside the shadow of the Upside Down.
Which leaves us with the ambiguity around 11's ultimate fate.
She appeared to make the ultimate sacrifice, right? Using the last of her energy to close the gate for good. But Mike, reflecting the show's entire philosophy, just refuses to believe she's gone. He holds on to that belief that she snuck out. And the narrative confirms that thematic triumph. While the physical reality is ambiguous, the message is clear. Hope and connection triumph over despair.
Now, what did the critics, those looking at the story from a more structural perspective, have to say about this massive conclusion?
Well, the professional critique often focused on execution. The season was generally seen as uneven and significantly overstuffed with characters. A lot of people felt the core arcs, especially for 11, Hopper, and Vecna, were often sidelined in favor of other stories, like Will's. And there was also considerable frustration over the fragmented release strategy. Critics felt it seriously undermined the final, cohesive story experience.
That is an incredible amount of lore clarified, from Dimension X being the true source of horror to the Luciferian symbolism around Vecna. But the essential takeaway, I think, brings us right back to the beginning. The power of unified friendship was the only thing that could overcome the deep-seated isolation that ultimately ate Henry Creel alive.
Exactly. And speaking of that final Dungeons & Dragons game, I want to leave you with one final thought that the narrative setup supports. Could the entire series have been one massive Dungeons & Dragons campaign run by Mike?
Wait, what? The ultimate Dungeon Master? How do you mean?
Well, given that the creators intentionally ended the series with the dice roll, and if you look closely at the credit sequences, you see sketches and drawings that look suspiciously like a player manual. It suggests that the world we just watched, the villains, the drama, the impossible stakes, might all be the creation of Mike's imagination, a grand story he told to his friends.
That puts a completely different spin on every dramatic decision and every impossible miracle, doesn't it?
It certainly makes you question the nature of the reality they fought so hard to save.
Keep questioning the portals and keep digging for the truth.